Thanks for watching this special program, Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform, presented by Software AG Government Solutions. I'm your host, Francis Rose, with the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. We have a lot of ground to cover in the next 30 minutes, including best practices for IT portfolio management, making the right IT investments, and the role risk management plays in an IT portfolio. It's a critically important topic at a pivotal time for federal IT, so let's get right to it. Joining me, Kristen St. Peter, Deputy Associate Director for Capabilities at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, John Owens, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and Chris Borneman, Chief Technology Officer at Software AG Government Solutions. Thanks all for joining us. Kristen, I want to start with you. This topic, aligning IT to mission, is top of mind at NGA. You're hyper-focused on public-private partnerships. Tell me how that fits together.
Sure. Thank you, Francis, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. So at NGA, everything's about mission. Our people are focused, relentlessly focused on mission and making sure that our customers have the geospatial information they need. So we ingest a lot of geospatial data. We then analyze it and we disseminate it to warfighters, senior policymakers, and first responders. We take this mission very seriously, which means we have a lot of information from classified and unclassified sources. The problem is one human being can't possibly search all that information and really give it its due, because the information contains important clues, right? We don't want to miss those clues. So what we'd like to do is automate the lower level functions, have geospatial information that says this is a train, this is a plane, this is a car. We can teach a computer to do that. Now that type of algorithm, that type of artificial intelligence, which at NGA means automation, that's a marketable, saleable commodity. Big bucks in the open market. So what we'd like to do is partner with inventive and interesting companies who are innovative and want to use our data to train their algorithms. And what we do in exchange for that data, we would split the intellectual property rights. We hold on to the government purpose rights. They can take the commercial rights. And that's how we want to partner. We want to basically repurpose this data that we have, that the taxpayers have already paid for, and maximize it to its absolute greatest potential. You
use a term called data as currency, and it sounds like that's where that comes from. The data becomes a commodity that you can use in this public-private partnership exchange. Am I on the right track?
No, you've got it. Perfect. So it's a data investment model. That's our goal.
What ultimately are you doing reorganization-wise as you're thinking about what the mission of the agency is going to be, and how does that then inform the way that you're building or rebuilding or reshaping your IT portfolio?
Right. So as government executives, we want to align ways, ends, and means, right? That's the hardest part of working for the government, making sure that your capabilities and your resources are aligned with your mission partners. We want to make sure our analysts have the best possible technology and all of the resources to complete their mission. So at NGA, we've reorganized. The goal of that is to better align our resources, whether they're computer resources, human resources, financial resources, with mission. And we want to make sure that our analysts have the best possible resources to do their job. It also means that we're going to break down some silos. We're going to partner up and pair up a little better so that our analysts are actually working with software engineers, developers, so that they can then take their trade craft and blend it with the technology and in order to meet our mission partner needs.
John, you have a similar data volume issue that Kristen has. It's shaped a little bit differently because of the intellectual property from individuals that you and your colleagues deal with at PTO. Tell me about how that informs the way that you build an IT portfolio, especially given the fact that you have 9 years of experience, the same agency. It's kind of an anomaly in the CIO community to have built out an agency-wide portfolio.
So the patent data is about 5 petabytes, so it's nowhere near as large as some other agencies, but more than most. As part of the law, the Chief Information Officer, myself, as part of my duties, is responsible for dissemination of intellectual property to the world. So we have to, in a very similar way, distribute the information so that others may build upon that intellectual property as part of the agreement and further the course of events that really affect the economy of the United States through the protection of intellectual property. So we very much, in a very similar way, provide information and data so that people can use it in private industry to make advances in technology. over the last 9 years, we've gone from what used to be a pretty heavily manual operation to a very heavily electronic, very modern. Some of the systems that I inherited, of course, started in the 1970s, written in dead languages. And we've been modifying and enhancing as well as replacing systems over the last few years in order to facilitate a very modern, not only examination of both patents and trademarks, but distribution of that data, both in bulk as well as through the internet.
What do you think is the most important lesson, or maybe 2 or 3 lessons that you've learned that would be applicable to somebody who doesn't have 9 years of experience in the same place building an IT portfolio?
Well, adopting modern standards based on industry standards and not really looking back on how things used to be done is an important thing to do. I know when I first got to USPTO, a lot of people were like, well, I come in and I do the same thing over and over and over, and challenging that to get them to act differently, think differently, is very important. And along with that, of course, over the last few years, we've adopted, last 5 years or so, we've adopted an agile methodology for software engineering and development. And in the last 2 years, a DevOps methodology for dealing with really taking Agile to the next step, which is operational agility. And that's brought a lot of new cultural change as well as a lot of new capabilities internal. Other than that, try to live within the government facilitation parameters. A lot of people come in and try to change the way that works. I don't think that really works in all instances. So try to live with the things you do have under your control. And then, as per the topic of this conversation, finding the way to best use the resources that you have available to augment the strategy that you're going to employ to accomplish the agency's mission. Because we want to use, in our case, the best use of the fees that we collect, since we are a fee-funded agency and not a taxpayer-funded agency, to the maximum effect to facilitate the furtherance of the missions of the office.
Chris, as Kristen and John were talking about what they're doing, you nodded your head enthusiastically quite a bit. It sounds like you heard a lot in what they talked about that syncs with what you advise people that you talk to in government.
Well, absolutely. And both are embarking on a lot of modernization efforts and tying it back to what the mission priorities are, and they are evolving. You know, right now is a great time to look at modernization. You know, the government is getting smarter about how to go through and fund these activities. You know, we had FITARA come down, but now just this month, the Senate went through and passed the Modernization Government Technology Act, right? And that's setting aside funds and a process to be able to support modernization a little bit differently than what we've tried to go through and do in the past. You know, the challenge, I think, is how do you go through as an agency and define what is that modernization strategy? How do you best use those resources? And how do you tell a story that kind of, you know, positions it and sells it and helps manage that transformation? You know, what we found is that good tools, particularly around IT portfolio management, but coupled with enterprise architecture, because the two are highly linked. You can't change your portfolio without changing your architecture.
Right.
So having good tools to do that, and those tools ultimately need to be able to support good data that's consistent, so everyone gets on the same page, has the same answer, that it's dynamic, because getting to DevOps, things are changing constantly, and so you don't want that static analysis that you did that goes in a drawer and it's out of date the very next day. And most importantly, that's shareable, so that everyone can look at the same data, get on the same source of truth.
One of the things that Kristen and John both said that I hear over and over and over again from technology professionals all across government, all levels, all sizes of agencies, is the alignment of IT to mission rather than vice versa, as we saw for many years, where IT was kind of done because it was, oh, we need this, so we'll add it on, and enterprise architecture was not really, it was an afterthought if it happened at all. How are you seeing that manifest itself now, and what does that evolution look like to you?
Well, I think most people now realize that the IT doesn't exist without the mission, right? So the mission really defines that. But what has been shifting, and we see a lot of good strength and a lot of good support around this, is that rather than aligning IT to the mission, you first align your capabilities to the mission. You know what you have today and where do you need to go, and then you align your IT to those mission capabilities. So IT does align to mission, but its best linkage is through the capabilities.
John and Kristen, to wrap up this segment, I'll start with you, John. What was that process like as you went through and wanted to realign, as we just talked about? realigning mission to IT rather than vice versa? Because this has kind of been a sea change in government over the last decade, half decade or so.
Yeah, that was actually quite a challenge. I brought in some concepts from industry, user-centered design, service-oriented architecture, N-tiered scalability, the cloud, and really addressed all of that up front as best we could. And it took a lot of learning by both my customers internally and externally, as well as my organization. And I think by bringing in the best practices, using good tools, keeping track of what you're doing, not repeating mistakes, making decisions and carrying those good decisions forward in project after project is all important to making sure that you build a scalable, maintainable, operable platform on which you can deploy technology. And then above and beyond that, the data is what's really important, and deploying that data in big data initiatives and providing that to the public in a timely manner is most important as well. And without that stability, you're not going to get it.
Kristen, about 30 seconds. How are you doing that at NGA?
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
So in the geospatial market space, the commercial market space is burgeoning. There's a data abundance, the likes of which we've never experienced. So how to integrate all that data and how to update and improve our infrastructure, our architecture, our software, our cloud storage, we are working through that currently.
We've set the stage with some best practices for IT portfolio management. Now let's turn to a critical component of any transformation. I'm talking about communication. Stick around for more of this special program, Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform. You're watching the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network.
Unleash your digital vision at the Software AG Innovation Tour 2017. Join us at the Marriott Marquis, Washington, D.C., November 2nd and 3rd. Learn what other leading organizations and agencies are doing to advance their digital transformation initiatives and citizen engagement with futuristic keynotes, educational test drives, breakout sessions on mission-critical topics in tech, and more. No cost for government to attend. Register today at softwareag.com/innovation.
Welcome back to this special program, Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform, presented by Software AG Government Solutions. I'm your host, Francis Rose. In December of 2014, Congress passed a historic law, the Federal IT Acquisition Reform Act. The passage of FITARA represents a turning point in government as IT and agency mission become one and the same. But many agencies still lack a clear chain of command. Here we explore how IT leaders seek buy-in to reshape complex IT environments. John, I want to start with you in this part of our conversation. Tell me about how you interact with the other CXOs at the Patent and Trademark Office, the acquisition shop, the financial management shop, and the others, to convey to them what you're doing in the IT world and how you can serve them and enable what they need to do.
So whenever a new CXO comes into the agency, it starts with a standard briefing, and I'm sure that's pretty common in the federal government since it happens to me about every 2 years in almost every position that's a peer of mine. So with that standard briefing, we introduce them to the government practices, as well as the CIPIC, which is derived from the Klinger-Cohen Act, of course, and of course the new FITARA, which talks about the responsibilities of the CIO. And we tell them about the projects that are currently planned and the processes by which we operate and manage them and get their involvement. And from that point on, they get regular briefings, whether it's at the CRB or ITRB level, which are part of the CIPIC process. They certainly get private briefings on their own products and applications at all tiers, so the CAO, CFO, and so on. I have to tell you, I tried to make the procurement officer my best friend. You can't do anything in the federal government without good procurement, and keeping everything in alignment there will certainly keep you out of trouble. So you try to work with them the best you can and listen to their advice, since they are personally accountable for the money that is spent out of the office. And through good relationships and solid deliveries, I've found that even working through some difficult deliveries, you can overcome those challenges as long as the dialogue is good. And when it's not, you work to fix it.
Kristen, John just confirms what I hear over and over again about this, which is this is not an IT issue. This is a leadership and communications issue and relationship building issue, it sounds like.
Absolutely. People are at the core of everything we do, right? We're very fortunate at NGA that we have leadership that really understands the need to innovate and has been extremely forward-leaning. In fact, I'd say probably one of the most forward-leaning agencies in the government in terms of adapting and finding new technology and adopting it. To echo something that John said earlier, agile acquisition in a DevOps environment, critically important to mission success. We don't know what the future is going to look like, but we need to try to figure it out. And so having that iterative development process and making that part of our culture, that's the key to our future success.
Chris, I want to flip this around. What should the other people in these organizations be providing to their IT teams so that they can deliver effectively?
Absolutely. So something I found in my own career even is getting a good definition of what success looks like. So one of the challenges is running through projects that they'll run through some bumps, or you get completed and everyone will go through and say, well, it's not quite what I expected. So getting that early buy-in, what are the key indicators today, and what do you expect those to change to as part of the modernization effort, part of that overall target? And then will those give you the results that you're looking for? And if so, then you define that, then make sure you manage to that and have that up front with all of your stakeholders.
How does a vendor play into that relationship, and how does he or she effectively come into that relationship and provide support, provide partnership?
No, that's a great question. So a couple of different aspects, from the partnership perspective. One is providing the right tools that you can build trust. Right. So one thing I've found is that I have different audiences, and they want to consume data a little bit differently, but you need to show it in a way that they understand it, and it has to be consistent. And so I've had meetings where if one piece was off from one presentation to the next, everyone gets very focused on that one aspect, and it blows away your trust, right? Your credibility to that. So providing that. And the other, I think, is just working with very good technology partners that step up to the plate and help you convey that very, very quickly and manage the risks associated with that transformation.
We'll talk more about risk management later in the program, but John, what does a vendor do that helps you serve the other CXOs in your organization effectively? What do they do well?
Well, it depends on the vendor and what I'm asking them to do.
Yep.
I like vendors that help participate in the development of applications in the way that we would like them developed. Spending my entire career from software developer on up in this, I take a little more of a hands-on approach than most federal agencies, right up into the point where I still review code. So, yes, it's kind of funny. But I thought my experience has been the more you interact with a good vendor and the more they're willing to put people on and stand the scrutiny and use measures and be held accountable, the better quality product that you deliver. And the better quality product you deliver, the better your customers accept them. And that's allowed us to actually start to turn off systems, legacy systems, without having to maintain both the new and the old, which stifles a lot of agencies. And then, of course, that leads to, and certainly the CFO likes this, you shut off something and then you get to hand back that money. Of course, then I ask for it to do something new, at least for a little while. So I think there's a good cycle there to get into, and I agree that part of the challenge is when you do have a failure or an inconsistency in perception, you have to address it. And I've had experiences where we have produced something, it's been good, we've hit a couple of problems, a couple of snags, or maybe some discovery and development, and the next thing you know, that's normal in the software development business, but my customer thinks it's not so good. And I'm like, but it's okay, that's what you'd expect now. And keeping them informed of what to expect is just as important, in my opinion, is getting them involved early and often in delivering what they want. Because as soon as their perception is ruined, it really doesn't matter what you end up delivering because their perception is already set.
Taking that first step to transform your organization's IT portfolio can be risky. We'll focus on how to increase your return on IT investments and reduce transformational risks next. You're watching Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform, presented by Software AG Government Solutions. Stay with us.
Unleash your digital vision at the Software AG Innovation Tour 2017. Join us at the Marriott Marquis, Washington, D.C., November 2nd and 3rd. Learn what other leading organizations and agencies are doing to advance their digital transformation initiatives and citizen engagement with futuristic keynotes, educational test drives, breakout sessions on mission-critical topics in tech, and more. No cost for government to attend. Register today at softwareag.com/innovation.
The phrase return on investment plays a larger role in the government lexicon than in years past. Tight budgets have led to more scrutiny of agencies' multi-million-dollar investments designed to enhance their IT portfolios. Here we focus on reducing transformation risks by understanding when, where, and how to make changes that will shape the enterprise. Joining me again, Kristen St. Peter, Deputy Associate Director for Capabilities at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, John Owens, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, and Chris Borneman, Chief Technology Officer at Software AG Government Solutions. I want to come back to the topic of risk management that we talked a little bit about earlier. John, I'll start with you on this one. Managing risk management in an IT portfolio environment, what does that term even mean to you?
Well, it's really about identifying the things that could interfere with a proper delivery. And I'm not talking about the mundane things, I mean real things. And then plans to effectively address them. That's at the core of what it is.
You've encouraged folks to embrace failure. You talked about it a little bit in the last part of our conversation. What's that like mind shift-wise, culture-wise, trying to change people's mentalities?
That's been one of the most difficult things to get people to address in the federal government, actually. But it's critical. We've used techniques like blameless postmortems and reviews with no management involved, where I have a saying, just don't repeat the mistake. It's never too late to do the right thing, just don't repeat the mistake. And it's a difficult cultural change, but one that's critical to live in a DevOps world.
How have you dealt with that transformationally at NGA? Because I imagine if there's a risk-averse culture, it's in the intelligence community.
Absolutely. So NGA's people are our greatest asset. Any senior executive knows that we are only as good as our people, and we want our people to be first rate. The advantage we have is our people are really good. We want to make them even better. So what we're trying to do is give them new skill sets, whether it's bringing in new skill sets from the outside in terms of software developers, systems engineers, or teaching our existing workforce how to code, which is something we are in the process of rolling out right now.
How do industry partners help agencies like these, Chris, to understand, first of all, the cultural transformation that has to happen, help them provide the cover that they need, and then demonstrate that the risk contributes eventually to ROI?
Well, absolutely. So I'm a big believer of a prove it first, prove it fast approach. And so really agencies should be working with industry to be able to do first a good proof of concept. Have them come in and actually demonstrate that what they're offering will solve or meet the needs, and factor in everything, not just the technology capability, but also the cultural change. What's the heavy lifting up front to actually get some sort of ROI associated to that? If that goes well, then expand it out into a limited production pilot. Try again, go through it again, manage that risk, and then pick a good project to start off with. Don't try and boil the ocean, and then ramp up your deployment.
John, the ultimate goal here, of course, is a good outcome that serves the mission of the agency, as we talked about earlier. How do you measure that in terms of all of the things that we've discussed, risk management and return on investment and all of those things, when you assess what you've done IT-wise?
Well, above and beyond the normal measures of any good, solid project management or portfolio management, I look at the measures that the customer wants. In our case, how many production units an examiner can go through, and how our measures of quality are improving, and did we automate part of that process so they don't have to waste their time with pen and paper and a notepad anymore. And we look at things holistically, and then we iterate, right? Because you're never going to get it right the first time. And then one of the biggest measures that I really like to look at, beyond just is an agile team producing the right velocity, or did we deliver on a date for a delivery of cost, do the calls that I'm receiving about the products reflect that people are asking me for more features than they're reporting bugs? That's one of my favorite measures. And certainly the more people ask me for more and less they complain about the stability of the product or the availability of the product, the more positive impact that I feel I've made.
Kristen, we have about a minute left, and measuring return on investment is different in government than it is in business. The kinds of things that John's talking about sound like the kinds of things that a lot of agencies use. I imagine the same at NGA?
Absolutely. You need to know your customer. What are their needs? And our customers vary between, national policy decision makers in the intelligence community to combat support, to first responders who deal with humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. They all have unique needs, and we really need to understand what they need in terms of geospatial intelligence, and we need to be good every day. And that's an ongoing assessment and an ongoing change, I imagine, adjustment in what they're expecting, not just a rote, we do the same thing all the time. Absolutely. As you know, the world is constantly changing, and we need to be ahead of it. Don't go anywhere. We'll wrap up this special program right after this. You're watching Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform on the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network.
Unleash your digital vision at the Software AG Innovation Tour 2017. Join us at the Marriott Marquis, Washington, D.C., November 2nd and 3rd. Learn what other leading organizations and agencies are doing to advance their digital transformation initiatives and citizen engagement with futuristic keynotes, educational test drives, breakout sessions on mission-critical topics in tech, and more. No cost for government to attend. Register today at softwareag.com/innovation.
We're back to wrap up this special program, Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform, presented by Software AG Government Solutions. Federal government's on the verge of an unprecedented reorganization, and many agency missions stand to change. Here we explore how IT leaders can take the first step in their journey toward digital transformation. In the time that we have left, I'd like to focus on what you see as the first step to realigning IT with mission. Kristen, I'll start with you. What's the most important thing there for somebody either starting from scratch or saying we have to go back and really revisit this alignment? Sure. Know your customer. Make sure your architecture, your software, your data storage, whether it's cloud or otherwise, match their needs. And when you're doing that, I imagine requires a self-assessment first before you have that conversation with your customer? Absolutely, and the self-assessment is not easy. A lot of us are dealing with legacy systems that are a bit antiquated, need a little work, need a few patches here and there, and so understanding that architecture, critically important. That also might require some preparation on your part before you can go and serve whatever it is the customer needs? Right, I think we're all dealing with that, no matter what domain you're operating on. John, step one for somebody in this alignment of IT with mission?
Well, I agree. You want to be able to not only do that self-analysis, but also go to your customer and find out where they think things are, and then find the difference between the two, and then help plot a course not only using technology and standards, but aligning those two things into one unified unified view of the mission.
What has been the best way to bring somebody who sees themselves differently than you and your colleagues see them on the IT side to kind of bring them into alignment with what you see and how you're going to be able to serve them?
Well, it's really about proving to them that you have the right measures in place and that you have a plan to get where they want to go.
Chris, step one in the IT mission realignment or alignment?
Sure. I mean, I think first off, you have to know where you're coming from. Right? So understanding what your systems are and understanding where your spend goes. Most IT organizations today spend 80% of their money just on sustainment. Then only 20% is really left over for that innovation, right? The strategic alignment. So if you can go through and understand where you're at and have a good conversation, have good data with your various stakeholders about where you need to transform, where you need to transition, you can start identifying opportunities. And successful organizations have shifted over to more like 50-50 in terms of what their spend is for sustainment versus what goes towards innovation.
Final thought, is that a good measure to look at 6 months, a year out as to whether that realignment, that spend realignment has changed?
Absolutely. I think especially in a government and based off of spending cycles is being able to take at least a 12-month and then understanding how incrementally year over year how you're doing on your journey and how it tracks back to strategic alignment.
Chris, John, Kristen, thanks all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this special program, Aligning IT to Mission to Strategically Transform, presented by Software AG. For more information on the subject matter we discussed today, go to softwareag.gov.com/IT portfolio. For the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network, I'm Francis Rose.